Well, when you're joining an Earth Expeditions class, it's important to remember you're part of this amazing dragonfly community. We have this shared vision of a world where all people live sustainably and are really thriving together with nature. And how we do that is we're really trying to build an alliance of leaders. And guess what? That's you all, who are really helping to create that positive ecological and social change in our local communities around where we live and also throughout the world. So it's a good chance to just remember that you're part of something bigger. I am Jill Korach. I'm our Assistant Director of Field Programs for Project Dragonfly, and this has really been a part of my career at Dragonfly is really thinking about that idea of how we can be part of something bigger through our Earth Expeditions program. So we have unique global courses in many different locations. Tonight we're going to talk about three of those, but just a quick reminder that our Baja, Belize, Brazil, Costa Rica, and Paraguay classes are all open to first year students. But if you're a current student in our AIP or GFP program, you'll see that you can actually choose from any of the locations that are listed here on this slide. And we have some amazing ones. No favorites because they're all pretty incredible. And we also have a winter term class in the Bahamas, which actually we're registering for right now. So if that's an interest of yours, feel free to send me an email and I can talk to you about that one. But just as a quick recap, these are online courses, April through August. So ensuring that you have time to be able to be present in those online courses. And then classes are typically 8 to 10 days in person, depending on the location. As you may already know, your tuition for those 5 graduate credits covers all your basic expenses and your program costs. So you're paying for both those credits and your costs for your activities during the course, your transportation. We also now have an option for CEUs or continuing education units, which is a little different than a graduate credit. So if that's something you're interested in, you'll find more information online. And any of the other travel that you're paying for is out of pocket. So that would be information that would be such as your taxi, your airline travel, hotels to be able to get to that location. So that is a suite of the classes that we offer. And then tonight we're going to cover three of those in detail. I did want to start with this idea that past students have shared as tips because sometimes this is just a good place to start from when you're thinking about joining an experience like this. Coming in with an open-hearted attitude, being ready to take on what a new place is going to offer to you really can allow you to have the best experience you can. Some of that includes things like simple living and just bringing less stuff, having fewer decisions to make about what you're going to wear by having fewer things in your bag can just be one less thing to think about. And I've really heard people over the years say, I just still had too much stuff in my bag, even though I tried to pack lightly. So think about forcing yourself into a smaller bag and seeing if that just helps you to choose fewer items. Really reading the course readings before you go and learning those conceptual ideas as best you can just allow you to ask deeper questions and have really richer discussions with some of the amazing local experts that we're going to meet when we're in these different field locations. Take time to get to know your classmates and your instructors online. Of course, you will have wonderful in-person interactions with each other, but that online environment can really be a place to start to make some of those connections and just make the class as strong as possible as it can be for you. If you can think about your personal intentions and your master plan, or even just the goals you have for yourself, having those in mind before you go can just help you to really see the experiences through that lens and take in as much information as you can. So I know my research is place-based, and I can walk into a place and be really thinking about that perspective that I'm coming from, and it just changes and shapes my experiences really positively. Focus on everything that you can learn, not just that one species that you really, really want to see. And then you'll be happy because you'll think over all of the experiences the class has had, all the different types of plants, animals, people, locations that you're going to get to see. And it just really tends to make a positive spin on your experience. And really being open and flexible to being slightly uncomfortable can be a great place to come from. You can see the image of this very smiley human in the center of this slide. She is in the midst of an India rainstorm in the monsoon season, and she's just taking it in. So I think that idea of really kind of realizing I'm in this place at this moment, what can I learn from it? whether that's new foods or new roommates or new locations. We really think that that's the reason these Earth Expeditions classes can be so beneficial for students. So we're going to start first because, tonight is really a chance to go more in depth on a few locations. So Dr. Michelle Zulowski is going to start with us and tell us a bit more about the Namibia course. And Michelle, I'll do the slides for you. So just let me know when you'd like me to advance them.
Wonderful. Well, this was my first time going to Namibia this year, and I had a fantastic trip. And I have so much, it could take 3 hours to tell you about it. So I'll try to be really brief. So just starting here with a picture of the group at the Cheetah Conservation Fund. One of the things that makes Namibia unique is that you spend most of your time sleeping in the same place, which is really nice if you're someone who likes to kind of set up your house a little bit. So that worked out really well. And you do walk over every day to the Cheetah Conservation Fund, which, as you can tell, is a lovely facility. So nice bathrooms, lovely conference rooms, snacks, and a gift shop for those of you that are looking for a little less roughing it when you're at a facility. So these are things that are nice to take into consideration. Also, our partner, Dr. Lori Marker, who is one of the founder of Cheetah Conservation Fund, is very open. And if she is at the facility, she's there to answer any questions and just to kind of shoot the breeze about what your interests are. So I found that all fantastic. You can switch slides. So Namibia was not what I expected when I think of Africa. Namibia is very dry and deserty, which for me is fantastic because I love it to be dry. I love arid places. So it is very deserty in a lot of the places that you'll be. You see a lot of wildlife around the Cheetah Conservation Fund because they have essentially 76 connected farms. So wildlife just passes back and forth, tons of ostrich and other kinds of birds. If you're a birder, lots of canids, some felids, of course, lots of giraffe. So fantastic things to see and just beautiful scenery. You really get that sense of being somewhere special when you're in Namibia. And this translocating yourself as you walk over to the Cheetah Conservation Fund, it's interesting to go sort of from this wild space to this nice facility. So that also made it really special. And you get to spend a lot of time in jeeps looking at animals, which is fantastic. Next one. So like I said, you do spend most of your time there at the Cheetah Conservation Fund. They've got some very large fields where you can do your inquiry. You can see there's some giant termite mounds that are fantastic to come up with questions about. But then we also travel up to one of the national parks and got a good view of some other wildlife that's not in the Conservation Fund area, such as the wildebeest, and we saw elephant. So we had a really good variety of experiences. And I think that was one of the things that made it so special. We went from seeing a salt pan where nothing survives to seeing what looks like a barren grassland, only to realize that there's so much life and so much biodiversity in that area. So that was fantastic. Flip to the next one. But if you're like me, the question that you really want answered is, where do I sleep? Where is the restroom, and what do I eat? So I wanted to share a little bit about the facilities there for those of you that are looking for, something specific. So on the lower right, you'll see the concrete buildings, which are where you stay at the Lightfoot Camp near the Cheetah Conservation Fund. So they are cinder block with metal roofs. There are beds inside, either bunks or flat beds, like on the lower left there. There are lockers and tables and places to set your stuff. So they're not insulated, but the temperature is lovely because during the day it's in the 70s and at night it drops down to about 45. So if you have a long pair of pajamas, that's all you really need inside. You need a coat for going outside in the morning and in the evening, but other than that, it's a lovely temperature. Most of the places that you will go is flat. So there's not a lot of big hilly areas. You do hike up one little hill, but that's it's an easy hike. Um, and the other thing is that there are some nice bathroom stalls there. So you can walk from your little concrete building to the bathroom that has four private outdoor showers that you can use. So all of that it was just really nice. It was like being in a really friendly camp and you have it all to yourself. And it's a really great place to bond. So I think that made it a different experience than the other I'd been on. And then as far as food, I worry a lot about food because I'm a very picky eater. Lots of great variety, simple breakfast foods, hot lunch and dinner, but it was all hearty food. Okay, lots of things that you probably don't get in the US, like pop, which is a kind of porridge, and plenty of vegetarian options, plenty of fresh vegetables that are grown there at the facility. And then again, if you're having any trouble finding exactly what you want, there is the opportunity to pick up things at the little snack bar at the Cheetah Conservation Fund. So that was my quick and dirty lowdown.
Mm. Michelle, thank you. We'll take a minute here to just pause for questions. If you'd either like to come off mute and ask that by voice or post anything in the chat, we'll take a minute for that right now. And that's a great chance to think about the overview of, just about 10 days in Namibia. It typically takes about a day or two to get there, depending on what type of airline transportation you find. And you're probably flying through two, at least, other airports on your way en route to Namibia, in case that's on anyone's mind as well. Great. Let's see. In the chat, Michelle, Sarah asked, I might have missed this food wise. Is there a lot of vegetarian options?
There actually were, and we had a few vegans with us as well. Breakfast is usually some sort of oatmeal or porridge, and then toast with peanut butter and jam, things like that. But they have a lot of sort of like you would have Morningstar Farms here in the US. They have a lot of sort of patties. So if there are hamburgers being eaten by the rest of the team, they will have a veggie burger for you. So they do have a lot of different varieties of things. So I found it very easy to find food. I went with 1,000 protein bars just in case, and I think I ate one of them. So plenty of options.
That's great. Michelle, thank you. And one other question, what kinds of things will you be doing throughout the week? Can you talk a little bit about activities?
Sure. Part of the activities are related to the Cheetah Conservation Fund itself. So you will go watch the cheetahs getting their exercise. You will see the feeding. You'll go behind the scenes to see what sort of animals there are that might be unreleasable. You'll check in at the hospital that's on site. You'll watch some cheetah training. We were lucky enough to get to watch a release of a mother and two cubs, which is not a normal thing you get to see. So don't go expecting that. And then you'll go out into the big field and you'll do some sort of mini safari drives. So you'll see a lot of jackals and warthogs, things like that. And then we'll do our inquiry there in that area. So it's a great wide open space. And then each day you have a different staff member from the Conservation Fund. So when you take your walk up Leopard Hill to look at the geological formations that are in the area, you'll be accompanied by someone who has an environmental doctorate, right? We've got lots of people from the education department that will go with us to different areas to teach us about native plants. So you might be doing a plant walk one day. You'll go to the cellular lab and see the kind of genetic testing that they're doing on the cheetahs to try to keep that genetic diversity. So it's a huge variety of activities. One day to the next, you never know what you're going to do, but all of the students this time, every single day, I always heard, it just keeps getting better. So that was the loveliest thing for me to hear.
Michelle, thank you. And I'll add just that programmatically in any of the Earth Expeditions courses, there are student-led discussions where you're doing some preparations in advance on particular topics, and then you're presenting that to your peers to kind of really start a dialogue about some of those ideas while you're in country. Sometimes there are instructor-led discussions that they might be thinking about some of the themes that you're seeing, and we're We're always willing to kind of toss the schedule aside if need be, if something really neat is popping up. So, like Michelle mentioned, having that really special opportunity to release an animal. I've had times where we've stopped to look at a snake that was in one of the barns in Namibia because it was just so unique and an opportunity for us to get to see those animals up close. So, we certainly have a set schedule that we're keeping, and we try to have some free time in that schedule, though for most people it'll feel quite busy because we are going activity to activity. We try to have some downtime where we can, and evenings tend to be free after whatever final discussion we're having for that night. So, one more question, Michelle. How likely are we to get to go to our first pick of locations? I can probably actually take that one. We will have you put in for your course preferences. And I would say kind of falling in love with your first few choices would probably be your most happy option. We do our best, definitely. We do have some locations that tend to be more popular, and so they just end up on people's lists sort of year after year. So I think if you think about in the past years, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but I feel like about 90% of people got one of their first three choices. So maybe if you think of it that way, and having that in your mind. Some of these course themes we've added to the Earth Expeditions web pages as well. So you can be thinking a little bit about if your master plan is focused on community-based conservation, or maybe it's more species-based. We have a number of classes that might be able to address that. But hopefully Namibia can be in one of your choices. Michelle, thanks so much for covering that.
You're
We'll
welcome.
turn next to our next location here, but feel free to keep posting questions as you need to. And I'm going to turn the slide over to our Borneo class, and Megan Lewandowski is going to present on that one from our team.
Hi, like Jill said, my name is Megan Lewandowski. I was the CLL for this past Borneo trip, and then I also was lucky enough to go to Borneo as a student several years ago. I'm writing down what time I started because there's no way I can only talk about Borneo for 5 minutes. Um, so, um, once the slide comes up, there we are. The first picture is us outside of a really cool cave that we were able to go to this year. If any of you are familiar with swiftlets, they're a type of bird in Borneo. The second the sun goes down at night, they fly out of the top of this ginormous cave, sorry, and birds of prey come down, bats come down for their nightly meal, and it's just an awesome sight. And the caves are just massive and full of animals and other birds and reptiles that I had no idea about. Borneo, even though it says primate conservation, you'll soon see in a minute. Borneo is definitely a hotspot for biodiversity. Doesn't matter if you're a primate person, a plant person, a reptile person, you're gonna see it in Borneo. You can go to the next one, Jill. Um, so Borneo is really unique in that it kind of is a choose your own adventure type Earth expedition. Um, we stay at a field research center the entire time. So kind of like what Michelle said, we're at the field research site the entire time. And there are different researchers there. So depending on what their focus is, you will go out and do research with them. You'll be collecting data with them. You'll be tracking pangolins. You'll be looking at some of the collared pygmy elephants that we have. Um, we did a species list this summer, which was really cool. So every time we saw something, we would put it up there, and there's no way I can even talk about all these. So I put really kind of like our big animals, macaques. There's pigtailed and long-tailed macaques, Bornean pygmy elephants, proboscis monkeys, only place in the entire world you'll ever see proboscis monkeys. And then, of course, a really rare sun bear, and my favorite, the orangutan. Tons of birds, tons of hornbills. I think there's 8 species of hornbills. I am not a bird person, but I was just absolutely amazed every single time I saw one. Plants, trees. The field site is in an old rainforest. So just the amount of beauty and resilience that you will see here is just fantastic. And I have to say, all of these pictures are within walking distance of where you're staying and where you're walking for our meals and our class discussions. So you're not hiking several miles to see these amazing creatures. We can go to the next slide, Jill. And as kind of I mentioned, you'll go with different researchers. Um, There are tons of boat rides. So if you love boats, this is the EE for you. Um, Michelle would not like this Earth expedition because it is hot and humid. It is not arid at all. Um, when Jill said at the beginning, pack light, because you want quick dry clothes. You're all going to smell, so you might as well just keep wearing your stuff over and over again because that's just the way it is, but it's a lot of fun. So boat rides, we helped with population counts of proboscis monkeys, of macaques, crocodiles, just fantastic. Also did some plant research and really I think we planted over 70 trees in an area that unfortunately had been devastated by flooding a couple months before we got there. So that was really cool to be able to be a part of that. Some of the trees that we're planting, past dragonfly classes, we saw orangutan nests in there and we saw orangutans wake up, and it's really cool to see them wake up in a nest that a Project Dragonfly student planted. One of the researchers this summer was tracking pangolins. So everybody in the class got to see a pangolin, which was just absolutely phenomenal. So that was, I think, the highlight of our trip. And we also went to a palm oil plantation, which was really interesting. We all kind of have our United States view of pangolin, or I'm sorry, of palm oil, and to go there, see the palm oil plantation, hear from the locals that are working there, really shifted some perspectives of students. So that was really amazing. I've got 1 minute left. We can go to the next slide. Um, like I mentioned, it's hot and humid. Um, we are in a Muslim community, so we don't do shorts, sleeveless. So, and really you want long sleeves on anyway because of the sun and heat. It's pretty sunny, like intense sun, can be rainy. So definitely bring a raincoat or a poncho. In the upper right-hand corner, the students came back from a night cruise and walked through a torrential downpour, and they had so much fun, and everyone said that was the favorite part. Katie and I, the other instructor, we were nice and dry inside in the main area, but we liked hearing everybody scream and run and yell as they were running. Activity level, I would say it's mid to high because of the heat. Um, and just sometimes there's a lot of mud, so you're having to take kind of different paths, and it's not always an easy path. Closed-toed shoes are required as well. Um, I'm sure you all can kind of see my screen. We put some pictures of lodging just so you could see bunk beds. Usually there's 4 to 5 students in a room. We're in one big, we call it the hostel, that has several rooms and bathrooms. So the bathrooms are inside. This is where we only have a generator, so you only have electricity for just a short amount of time in the evening. So that's usually when people shower and try to go to bed before the fan goes off. Um, food, lots of meat and rice, vegetables and fruit. I am a vegetarian, and there were two other vegetarians. We did not starve. They fed us very well. You can have snacks there. And then, of course, they have water, tea, and coffee available as well. Like I mentioned, lots of boat rides. You're on the boat 2, 3 times a day, typically. A few bus rides, and then lots of walking. Okay, I went over 2 minutes. I'm so sorry.
No, Megan, that's great. We have plenty of time for questions then too. So I think you addressed Melody's question already about clothing and kind of asking that idea. It is a great place to be able to even have, even if you are wearing a tank top, having some type of shawl or something that you could pull over as a scarf. It is very important. We've had some students in the past kind of gruffling at this one, but it's what's culturally appropriate. So we follow kind of within that those norms. And like Megan said, it's good to be covered up for lots of reasons, and otherwise. So it ends up being the case. But any other questions that come up about this Borneo course experience? Let's see. Borneo is a first year class. And if so, is it okay to go in your second year? Actually, this is not one of our first year locations. So it's fine to go in your second year. And actually, for any of our other first year locations, we tend to have placements for second and third year or plus fourth or fifth year students as well, because we want to be sure that you get those opportunities to go to the locations that you think would be a good fit with your master plan. And that's all just sort of a big shell game of trying to get everybody as high a choice as we can as possible on their course preferences lists. Looks like there was a question about gluten-free. Are they able to accommodate gluten-free, Megan?
I think they can. I know it gets a little trickier, and I probably should have said when I was talking about food, like Michelle kind of mentioned, we do recommend that you bring snacks. So I think they probably could. You just might need to kind of supplement a little bit with food that you bring. And no, Melody, it's not spicy. Um, there wasn't a lot of spicy food. And if there was, they would tell you, and they kind of made like a hot and a mild. And um, so, yeah, not a problem.
One other thing, are there any issues with wearing or any needs for mosquito netting while you were there?
No, actually, the bugs are not bad. I thought I went to Belize several years ago, and I thought there were more bugs in Belize. You're so far in the jungle um, that there really isn't. I mean, we do recommend, bug spray, of course, but no, I don't think so.
That's always good news to hear. That's great. Excellent. One other one here, are there vaccinations that we should get before going to any of these locations? And I'll let you know that because we're not medical professionals, we can't tell you what to do, but we can tell you to go to the CDC website or look at our course materials. Typically, it's a good chance to sit with your doctor and be able to just talk over your own general health. Is there anything you need to be caught up on because you'll be in some other environments? We are in a field station, so a lot of times diseases or concerns that we have on our minds are around mosquitoes or they're around water, right? So local water sources and things like that. So it would be great to be able to look that up and be able to make some of those choices with your medical professional. But if there is any type of specific needs, we note those by location on our web pages. And it looks like Melody just got back from Paraguay. That's wonderful. And the mosquitoes were intense. I'm sorry to hear that. I know what that feels like. Sometimes the place is wonderful anyway, right? As many of our kind of tropical locations ends up being. But Megan, thank you so much. That's really a helpful look at our Borneo course. And if you have additional questions on any of the three locations that we talk about, please keep posting those in the chat. That's no problem to be able to do at all. That was really helpful. So I'm going to turn our attention to our Thailand class as our third class that we will cover tonight. This class focuses on Buddhism and conservation. Actually, the first slide that we showed as we were all logging in, those students are hiking across this really beautiful place in Khao Yai National Park, which is one of the locations that we visit. But the theme here is really trying to consistently go back to sort of Buddhism and mindfulness, and also thinking about how that fits into conservation, whether that's through the ecological, cultural lenses that we'll try to look through during our 10 days on the course. So we start out in Khao Yai National Park, and it's a really neat place because it's actually the closest national park to Bangkok. And since Bangkok is an incredible global city, a lot of people visit Khao Yai National Park. So interestingly, we'll be in our field clothes and we'll be dressed very conservatively and covered up. And you will see people driving up in expensive sports cars with very less sensible shoes, kind of walking around the park and also experiencing it. So it's a really neat chance to see what is a national park really like when you're nearby sort of a larger city, and seeing people having those quick trips into the park. But at the same time, we'll get opportunities to be out in the natural environment while we're there as well. Particularly with a group of hornbill researchers that have been doing research in this area for decades now. And so the picture with the group all looking up and pointing up, they are looking way up at a hornbill nest, way up in a tree, with one of the local researchers there. And the interesting thing about this research is that they really have to use a lot, or they have chosen to use a lot of mindfulness and Buddhist practices, in the sense that they have to sit in the forest for a really long time and wait on these birds. And so it's kind of an interesting idea of combining sort of what does it take to do field research, and how can you really be joyous and enjoy it. So some of these people have been doing this for also decades throughout this program. So it's wonderful to learn with them. And they take us out on some hikes where we go out to hopefully get a chance to see. There's the biggest potential for probably 3 species of hornbills during this class. Like Megan, I am not a bird nerd, but I have certainly become an appreciator in these spaces. They're quite beautiful and loud and showy birds. So it's pretty awesome when you see them fly overhead. So we have a few chances to go on hikes where we're looking for them, but we're also getting opportunities to be in the forest where we're looking more closely at some of the plants. The student here in the lower right-hand corner is doing kind of a square foot assessment of just a little portion of the forest. So she's getting a chance to really go deeper on the observations within that space. And like Michelle said, I always kind of want to know where I'm going to sleep. So here we are. This is one of the lodges that we stay in the national park. There's kind of this camping area that's more for groups. So we have some cabins there that we stay, and there's typically 2, 3, 4 people, depending on how big the room is, with a bathroom attached to that room. That's kind of a private bathroom with a toilet, sink, and shower. And then there also are some other bathrooms that people can use throughout the park. And we go down to the visitor center where we actually are just sort of amidst other visitors within the park. But it's simple accommodations that work out quite well for the course. There is a fan, and that electricity does stay on in the evening, which is kind of nice. So we tend to line up our beds with the fan just perfectly, so that you try to get as much breeze as you kind of can while you're there. In Khao Yai National Park, we're actually at a little bit higher altitude, so it is a little bit cooler in the morning, though that does kind of quickly turn into a more hot, humid day, which is typically kind of most of what Thailand kind of has to offer when it comes to climate. Then for the second half of the course, we travel to a forest monastery. This is a really special opportunity to be with Prapaisan Visalo, who's there in the ochre-colored robes in the picture in the top. He has been the abbot at this monastery for 40 years, since he was 27. I think he's 67 now. And he's an incredible human because he was a social activist before he became a monk. And he's really been driving forward environmental messages, thinking about clean water, thinking about the plants and animals and their importance. So we get this really unique opportunity to just live monastic life with the monks. They understand that this is not our lifestyle. They know that we are not going to do things right. And they really kind of just approaching that with that open-hearted attitude that I talked about before. They kind of smile and laugh when they sort of see you, just doing your best. So, you learn to take your shoes on and off before you're entering certain places, or giving some respectful gestures when you're seeing monks and nuns walking around on site. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner there, they use that same colored robe to actually ordain a tree. to be able to say that that's one of the elders in the community, because it is. Many times these trees are much older than we are and probably a lot wiser too. So we get these opportunities to see some of the Buddhist traditions being brought into conservation settings. That is Papasan's house, that beautiful hut that's over the water. And we do have an opportunity to have a class discussion sort of in his space. And this is a class a lot of people worry about, like, where are we going to stay when we're at the monastery? So I wanted to show you what my room looked like last year there, which is in the center bottom part of the slide. So it's a bed and it's wood. And then we pile up blankets, kind of like a princess bed, to sort of make ourselves a mattress. Um, and then I tended to put more blankets around my shoulder and my hips, just like I would if I was camping. So it's almost like indoor camping, I would say, because we're either sleeping on the floor or on a firmer bed. But the accommodations are very simple and they're very nice. I really liked the simplicity of this class because it's not what my house looks like at home. I have way too much stuff here. So sort of a chance to just have that simpler lifestyle. And then we're walking around the site. So it's a gentle walk around paths that each of us are staying, probably one, two, or three people in different huts. And they actually separate you by gender there. It's just part of monastic life in that place. So it's just one of their cultural norms. And we can help you determine what that means while you're there if you end up with a placement here. They certainly are very open to thinking about a continuum of gender identities as well. And then in the bottom right, I wanted to share this is what it looks like in our classroom space when we're at the monastery. So we are typically sitting crisscross on the floor, but there are a lot of chairs in the back of the slide that you may not be able to see. So if your hips are like, no way can I do this any longer, you sit in a chair. It's no problem at all. It's very common for people to sort of move around, to stand up and stretch. But generally speaking, we're sitting in this kind of central classroom area that's used for different discussions that we have. And that small picture is of Prapaisan's book. It's called Prapaisan's Temple School, and it's actually one of the additional readings for this course. We ask you to purchase the book, and we send it to you in the mail before you go. And it just has all these really lovely nature lessons that Prapaisan has learned from his time of being in this forest monastery. We get time for walking meditation. We get time for seated meditation. We get time alone in the forest for several hours where we just get a chance to kind of just be. So I think that this class gives you a chance to be introduced or to further your knowledge of some of these mindfulness practices. It's in a very open and accepting way so that you really can think over, hey, I think these are some of the things I want to try at home. And I'll tell you, my class right now from this past summer, we still have a WhatsApp group where we're trying to talk over some of those mindfulness practices that we hope to bring home with us during the course. So our intention is to introduce students to lots of different ways so that we can all think about what will be the best fit for us. And then lastly, I mentioned some of these things already, but there are several longer hikes that we take. We're walking daily to and from lodging and classrooms, and that usually takes a few minutes to be able to get around. Thai food is a huge highlight on this course. They have incredible veggie options. They love to have us try out lots of different types of foods. There's tropical fruits, there's juices. I love it. Here's a picture of just one of many meals that we have during the course. We do transportation in a large bus. It's a quite large kind of Greyhound style bus for the longer rides, but you can see here in the bottom left, that's called a song tao, which is an open air bench seat vehicle. And so everybody's kind of sitting here along. That's a nun in the front that's smiling so much on the left. And then we also use a pickup truck at one point where we go to a planting site. We're just riding in the back of a pickup truck, but it's maybe 10 minutes of riding. So it's not your most comfortable moment, but it gets you there. And there's seats inside if that's something that you'd feel uncomfortable with. But we do a reasonable amount of walking. And the one thing this class has some notoriety about is the leeches. So there are land leeches, and they tend to live in the grass. And you can see here on the right-hand side, this is the very fashionable leech sock, which you also would probably be using in the Borneo course, Megan, would you say as well at times? And so here for the Thailand class, you'll see students are wearing them on certain days. and we help you have access to those socks if it's not something that you already own. But it's really nothing to be too scared of. It's just that they can kind of attach on, and we try to avoid that by wearing these socks so that there's an additional layer over top of your pants to try to keep them away. Um, but that's really kind of the top level on some of the questions that I tend to get. Oh, good. Megan's saying no leach socks at the field site. That's wonderful to hear for the Borneo course. Excellent. And so it's probably just maybe 2 or 3 days of the course that we're wearing them for one of the hikes that we're taking. It's not a consistent thing that we're having to wear throughout. And we have times where we're going for a meal and we can kind of vent our legs for a while if those are starting to feel hot and then put them on for whatever hiking that we're doing. So are there any questions about this Thailand course that I could answer? Excellent, great. I'm going to flash forward here to just kind of as we close. So if you're a current student, as many of you introduced yourselves earlier, thank you for doing that. You would have been emailed a form, and that summer request is due on October the 25th. So if you can get that in for us, that would be great. We still have 3 other Inside Earth Expeditions sessions here in the bottom right of this slide. So if you want to be able to join any of the others, please join us. We'll try to make them all about, 30 to 45 minutes, kind of going through whatever information we can during that time. If you're a new student or an alumni who wants to take the class, those applications are slightly different and they're through our webpage, and those are due on January 15th. So if that helps you think about, there's just so much you can gain from an opportunity like this. And I see a couple questions in the chat that I can move to as well. Asking about the conservation aspects of the Thailand class. Yeah, Sandy, there are several. There is the idea that in the national parks, there's almost a habituated nature to some of the animals. That's one of the conservation issues that they're kind of addressing. The hornbills have been a long time conservation, really kind of well understood species because they are so unique in how they nest and their kind of reproductive process. Trying to ensure that there are trees that are a good fit for nesting is one of the conservation issues that we'll get to learn the most about. Another one of the issues is bird conservation that we will work with a local youth group to learn a little bit more about at the monastery. And just one more to think about the plant side of things is rice. Actually, there is such a high percentage of rice produced in Thailand, but there is very few varieties of that rice. So there are some people who are really working on the hundreds of possibilities for varieties of rice and trying to bring some of those back into Thai culture would probably be a few of the ones that I mentioned. How many applicants are accepted is a good question. I wouldn't really know exactly how to answer it depending on how many applications we have. There are always people that we don't have space for, but we try our best to be able to place as many people as we can in the courses that are offered. So when you put your application in, if you can put down as many course locations as can work for you, as well as maybe some notes about your schedule, that always helps us to try to see what can be possible for you. And you can always apply again next year if that's needed. For current students, we try hard to ensure that we can place you in the summer, knowing that you're trying to get through your master's degree, probably in a certain amount of time that you're planning for. And so we'll do our best to try to get you into the courses that you're hoping for. Great. Any other questions? Excellent. It was wonderful to have you all here tonight. On behalf of Megan and Michelle, myself, just thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing your applications in our systems. Thanks and have a good evening. Bye.